Let this sink in for a moment. The lack of financial education cost Americans $450 billion in 2021. 78% of American homeowners are living paycheck to paycheck. And right now, most American homeowners are equity rich and cash poor. That's another word for broke. The media isn't helping you, schools aren't helping you, and the government for sure isn't going to save you. As a top 1% mortgage professional and seasoned investor, I cannot sit around and watch these life-changing skills that I've learned outside of traditional schooling be unused, untaught, and thrown in the trash can. So until these statistics change, I'll be here every single week, preaching and teaching personal and professional finance, information that you can use in your life, however that looks, whether you are 16 or 60. Hey there, friends. Welcome back to another episode of my Happy Homeowner podcast. I have a special guest today. This one's going to be really, really fun. I've got Tyler Morgan with Compass Real Estate, and this is kind of, I do a series once a month where I do a professional spotlight, where I interview someone in the community, typically in real estate or the investment space or the money space or the financial spaces that can add value to you. And Tyler is just doing a phenomenal job right now in real estate. I believe that right now you're looking here at the face of real estate. I think there's a major shift happening across the country in real estate. You know, I was reading a stat, a couple of months ago, the average realtor was like in their 50s, but even potentially pushing 60. And the funny thing is we have millions and millions of millennials coming into the marketplace right now. We have hundreds of thousands of millennials that own real estate right now that maybe bought a house during 20 and 21 just to buy a house. It wasn't their forever home. It was just to get in the game. And guys like Tyler, they really are. They're going to carry the torch forward, really are the future of real estate. So I want to spend some time today talking with Tyler. This is going to be fun. Tyler is going to share some tips on his best practices on how he's winning and attaining more listings in this market, how he caters specifically to sellers. This is all about home ownership and sellers. We'll do a totally different podcast on buyers. But today you're going to get a lot of valuable information on the market, pricing your home, getting your house ready for market. So welcome, my friend. It's good to have you.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Appreciate the intro. Happy to be here. Yeah, I've been in the market for about 4 years now. Work with a lot of first-time home buyers, but actually the majority of my business has come through serving sellers and helping them list and sell their homes. So happy to be here.
So one of the things that, and I know you get this all the time, but as a mortgage professional, I get this from past clients of mine. One, there's so much confusion out there in regards to what their home's worth, right? From you have Zillow out there to, Redfin. And then, I use an app called HomeBot. I like HomeBot because it has the similar type algorithm that Zillow and Redfin have, but it allows you to go in as a homeowner and say, hey, we just updated our kitchen and put $60,000 into remodels in our kitchen, or we just added on a blank, or when you bought the home, we bought it this month, this date for X, because it might have been listed for $900, but they bought it for $1,100, for example, and you plug in the interest rate. So the great thing about HomeBot is it provides a more accurate idea of what your value is worth. But with all that said, these are just algorithms. So a professional like you, one of the things I wanted to kind of start off talking about is when you get that phone call, hey, Tyler, we're thinking about listing our house, and your preliminary research, how do you, first and foremost, as you start looking up their home, how do you start putting together your best? I know this is an art and a science too, so we may not have time to go really deep into this, but where do you start to get your clients some information on it? Yeah, well, your value is approximately X.
Yeah, so real estate is global to local, right? So whether we are looking at a maximum area like King County, or we're diving into a specific area like Clyde Hill and Bellevue, you really want to take into account all the data that we have based on the market that you're in. So I will never give a price without seeing a home in person. I know there's strategies and programs and things where you can plug in updates that you've done, but until I really see it and walk through it with the eyes of a buyer, I can't give you an accurate representation of a price point that might work. So it also boils down to need, right? So why are you selling? What are you going to do next? Do you have a home already picked out to buy? All these things come into play because of your timeline, right? We talk about markets. Real estate's always a latent industry where we get data from the past and we interpret it for the future. So trying to take the data that we do have and help sellers understand what's coming up next can really help people bridge that gap.
So I've never heard a real estate agent talk about that. That's why you're here, because you're smart. You guys, you're smart. I love two things that you said, talking about data. You're taking data from the past, which you are, and the data that we have right now, you and I were talking about this the other day, is not great data, because we're coming out of a declining market. So a year ago, so if you look at if June and July of last year, rates went from literally 3% to 8% overnight, and the market literally stopped. Yeah. And so, and it kind of cooled off or stopped or went down for about 3 or 4 months, and then it plateaued. And then right around the turn of the new year, it started to pick up. I think buyers were a little bit more savvy and a little bit more understanding too, knowing that once inflation gets taken care of, interest rates are going to come down. So these high rates aren't here to stay. And then around the turn of the new year, interest rates started to improve as well. And they started to believe some of the info they were getting from pros like you. But when we go back to data, you were getting bad data. We and appraisers are evaluating poor data right now, because the data over the last 6 months certainly doesn't support what you're going to sell your home for 30 days from now, right?
Right. Yeah, it's definitely, if you're looking at comps from 6 months ago, you're too far back. And if I'm doing that today, that's less true than it was back in January when you're trying to comp a home. So with rapid shifts in the market, like you said, with the interest rates, Dan, it's something that we really try to hone in on the most accurate data. But you're right, it has been hard for the last couple months to really try and find accurate data in a market that has been price-wise declining. Heading into April, I mean, we're looking at stats right here from March. Looks like we have an average of, and this is for the east side in King County, Dan, where we have 43 days on the market as of March. We're sitting here at May 2nd, so the April data hasn't shown up yet. But my assumption is that April days on market is going to be significantly lower because of the spring market that finally is starting to get here.
I love it. And you're very data-driven. You're smart, but you're data-driven. And again, I learned this a long time ago from a guy named Tony Robbins. You may have heard of him. Yeah. And he said his best advice to young people is to understand cycles and understand how to interpret data. Right. And you're doing exactly that, because I see a ton of charts and everything here that we're going to end up going over. All right, so the other thing that you said, and I want you, as viewers, I want you to understand how important this is. You said earlier that I will never go price a home without actually walking the neighborhood and walking the property. That's right. That is brilliant. I think a lot of real estate agents will be like, yeah, I think your home is worth X. Until you see that home through the eyes of a buyer, and I love it how you said that, that is so true. Views, neighborhood, proximity to X, Y, and Z, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Neighbors, different types of homes in the neighborhood. You might have a beautiful rambler, but if it's in a neighborhood of split levels, it's a little bit different, right?
It is. Yeah, it's different. And just based on a story that I have from a previous seller, he bought the house. It was an inherited property, I think, actually from his family, but he was a builder by trade. And so he spent time remodeling the house and updating it. And then he really thought, based on the time and money that he put in, that it was worth a certain amount. But it became the nicest house in a neighborhood full of 1960s, 1970s homes. And he lost probably 5 to 8% of value just based on that alone. So it's very important. Location is everything with real estate.
Yeah, no, that's key, man. I love what you say. You've already dropped a couple of gold nuggets so far. All right, so I'm watching the podcast. We're kind of thinking about listing our house this year. What's the best way? What's your best advice for someone watching this that might be 3 to 6 months out, but they're thinking about selling their home? So the first question to you is, what's your best advice in helping people prepare their home for sale? And then the second question is, what is the key to pricing a home in today's market? So let's talk about the first one, preparing your home for sale. What's some advice that you have for someone who's thinking about selling their home and going to prepare their house for sale?
So preparation is always something to set up how the presentation will go, right? And so the first thing I recommend anybody do before you really start to make any changes is consult with a professional, right? Make sure you talk to somebody who knows the market, who knows the market trends in terms of what buyers are looking for, certain trends come in and out, whether it's colors or kitchen design, bathroom design. So those things are constantly changing, and what you may think is a good idea may not be a good idea to the market. So that would be the first step, is to consult with a professional. And then from there, somebody like myself who comes and walks through a home, I can make detailed suggestions, and I've also got contractors and stuff that can back up those suggestions and make those improvements if you choose to do that.
Well, some of the things I've seen before too is that you might think that you have to put that new roof on or maybe re-side a portion of your house. Mm-hmm. And, Tyler may come out and just say, hey, no, based on the market and the amount of inventory and the amount of buyers out there and what interest rates are doing, save $20,000 by not having to put a new roof on, because buyer A might want a new roof, but buyer B is going to say, I don't care, I'll buy it without it. Yeah. And that could put $20,000 extra in your pocket, for example.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's another thing we always say is, like, any big expenses that you can avoid, if it's in working condition and if it's something that you've serviced, something like a roof, for example, or a furnace, anything like that that's in working order may not be worth the money that you put into it on the sale. You might not see that back, right? But when we talk about things to improve, roof and flooring are the common elements of, if it's in disrepair, that might be something that seriously is worth looking into. And Dan, my job as a professional agent, and you as a broker as well, know about fiduciary duty. So as soon as you give me a call, that duty starts from that day one, right? And it's my job to help you understand where you should spend money, where you should save it, and then how we can maximize your profit in the market.
I love that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's an amen right there. All right, so that's great. Thinking about selling your home, thoughts around that. Now, how are you pricing homes right now? So it's the 1st of May, 2023. Heading right into a hot spring market, summer market. That we're probably already in the spring market, but spring/summer market. What's the keys to pricing a home right now?
So pricing a home is going to be, number one, I'm going to look at comparable properties. And the second part of that, kind of a 1B, if you will, would be the timeline in which those properties have sold. I'm going to take a look at active, pending, and sold properties, making sure I get the entire lay of the land with what the market is doing. Actives are going to show you what your competition is doing, right? Mm-hmm. So you can see if there's a property that's sitting there for, let's say, $600,000, and they've been on the market for 75 days, 100 days, a long time. Mm-hmm. They have a lot of market time. That comp is telling us that their price might be chasing the market a little bit, right? Comparatively, if there's a same house in the neighborhood that's listed at $550, and assuming all three houses, right, yours and these two that we're talking about are the same exact house, if that house is priced at $550 and they're pending in 2 days, I can assume that went well and they got a lot of interest in those 2 days because they accepted an offer in a short amount of time. Same story with solds, right? Because solds are closed. That's a record of what they got, what actually transacted, and that's the most solid data that we can work with.
I love that. Okay, so that's more gold right there. So your research starts with active, and then pending, and then sold. So I love that. Your active listings are going to be kind of show you what you're up against if they don't sell by the time you list, but what you're up against. Pending is going to kind of also help you kind of polish up what you're up against and maybe give you that competitive advantage, because you could look at the pending and be like, wow, that went pending after 2 days, or that went pending after a 4-day review period.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Now it's still a comp. It's still a 4-bedroom, 2.5 bathroom like ours, 3,000 square feet. Okay, cool. And then the sold, I love the sold part of it, because the sold is what the appraisers are going to look at, right? And then the solds are just, if you know that homes are appreciating because you have data to the tune of 7% right now, and it's sold at 900, you're not going to list at 900, or you may to generate a bunch of buyers, but you know that it's going to sell most likely at 7 to 10% north of 900. So
so that's, when then you bring that up, that's another good kind of stat that we look at is the sale price to list price ratio, right? So back in the pandemic, for example, on the east side, properties that were listed were acquiring anywhere from 10 to 13% over that asking price. Comparatively, with the most recent data that we have from March, that ratio is about 98%. So comparatively from 1 to 110 in the pandemic when the hot market was to now it's about 98%. So again, just another metric that we can use to our advantage in terms of how we're going to price your home.
I love that.
Yeah.
So from 10 to 12%, 10 to 13% over list price versus sold. So it was listed, for example, at 900, sold for 10 to 13% north of 900.
Right.
And now you're saying that maybe not that same home, but a home that's priced at 900 now is going for about 2% lower than list.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
It's an average again, broad market ranges. We're looking at all of the east side, so there's thousands of homes in there. But yeah,
you're talking $30 million plus homes to $750,000 condos, right?
Exactly.
So that's a big variety. Now, this is another reason why it's so important that you're working with a guy like Tyler. Tyler can literally just hone in and focus on, specifically today we're talking about the east side, but you could focus in on the different sub-communities or communities. You could focus on, for example, Redmond or Kirkland or Maple Valley, for example, and get hyper local data, which is so important. Right. All right, so we're going to talk about more data, and we're going to kind of geek out on this, and this is where it's going to get really fun because you're a pro at this. Seller's market versus buyer's market. Mm-hmm. When I hear you say that homes are selling at 2% below list price on average, instantly I'm like, wow, are we in a buyer's market now? The data might identify as a buyer's market, but we're not in a buyer's market, are we?
No, it's pretty far from it. It's we talk about like a seller's market versus a extreme seller's market. So the pandemic was an extreme seller's market. This is something though now where it's more of just a seller's market, right? So when we talk about whether it's a seller's market or whether it's a buyer market, typically the main metric that's used is how many months of inventory do we have, right? So anything 3.5 to 4 months of inventory or higher is going to denote a buyer's market. Anything less than that is going to make a seller's market. And months of inventory, for those who don't know, is basically just a metric of if nothing else came to the market today, how long would it take for the market to sell out, right? So that's the first thing that we look at. The second thing that's not as highly considered or not highly understood because it is more confusing is called an absorption rate. And the months of inventory is great because it'll tell us how long that market will take to deplete. But the absorption rate kind of measures what's coming to market and how quickly it's turning over. Does that make sense? So it's
So it's a much more accurate depiction of someone just going, oh, it's a seller's market because we have X number, months of inventory here. So for example, I'm looking at stats right here that shows the last time we were in a legitimate seller's market was 2014, where we had about 4.5 to 5 months. Well, 2014, 2015, we had about 4+ months of inventory. Since then, the highest that we've seen is about 3 months, and that was in the peak of 2017. It peaked again in 2018, and then since then, it's just been a downhill roller coaster ride to literally at one point in 2021, I think we had 9 days of inventory, right? Instead of a healthy market being right around that 3.5. Well, let's talk real quickly about a healthy market. A healthy market in the United States of America as a whole would be right around 3.5 to 5 months.
Yeah, 3.5 to 5 months. And this is when you talk about a healthy market, I mean, you're basically saying, what can a seller sell for that would make them happy, and how can a buyer have more than just one option of a house, right? So that's healthy. I think 3.5 to 4, maybe 5 months of inventory would be healthy because again, you look at different buyer pools. Not every house on the market is going to fit every buyer in the market, right? So that's kind of the
And in a healthy market, homes are listed for about 30 to 60 days. Normally it's like, oh my God, we got to list our home and hope it sells in 60 days. Now it's like you list your home and the doggone thing sells in 6 hours. Oh and so, we're dealing with massive extremes since 2020, right?
Exactly, and we're starting to see that now again because the spring market usually picks up mid-March, late March. But as we've seen this year, inventory just didn't jump up like it normally does. So I'm excited for April's numbers to come out and really kind of denote what that, that pattern.
So happening. Side note, follow Tyler on Instagram. What's your Instagram real quick? I'll throw it up on the screen too.
It's just tylermorgan.re.
Follow Tyler on Instagram to stay up to date on these stats. So when these numbers do come in month over month, you can count on him doing a video or something explaining it. But I really love the fact that you went deeper than just a buyer or a seller's market and talked about absorption rate. I think that's really big. So let's I don't like using the word crystal ball. I don't believe in the whole crystal ball thing, because the last thing, and I look at you as a professional, the last thing that I would do to my doctor, if I went to my doctor and said, well, if you had a crystal ball, how do you see this surgery playing out? Well, I want him to be like, well, I've done 4,500 of these knee replacement surgeries, and you're going to walk and you're going to dunk again and all that stuff, right? So table the crystal ball, but talk about kind of the future. What do you see data driven and statistically? What do you see real estate in the east side? So specifically today, we're talking about the east side, not necessarily Seattle, but as a whole, they kind of blend. But what do you see real estate doing in the next, 6 months here on the east side?
Well, I mean, the east side and Seattle markets are one and the same comparatively to the rest of the country, just because we've always had, I've lived here for 10 years, but talking to other people who have been here for longer than that, there seems to have always been a higher demand than there has been supply. So when we look at pre-pandemic numbers, again, going back to data and statistics, appreciation for the east side was around 6 to 7% annually. I think for Seattle, it's more around 4 to 5. This year, because it is, people are getting used to those higher interest rates. People are getting used to the fact that the price of homes just kind of is what it is now, and there are ways to make it work. But buyer sentiment kind of took a hit when those rates jumped up in 2 or 3 months like they did. So people are still reeling a little bit. But I think, in my opinion, and like you said, no one has a crystal ball, but I think in the next couple of years, we're going to start to see more trend lines back to that 4 to 6% equity gain year over year. Which is good news, because people that bought in the pandemic right now, they're probably at a loss based on what their Redfin estimates are saying, things like that. So there's hope going forward.
I love it. So we're going to wrap up with some really good info here. Yeah. And this is more practical questions. Mm-hmm. A friend calls you up, okay? They own a home, and they have owned a home for like 7 years, for example. Mm-hmm. They call you up and they say, hey, listen, we would love to sell. We would love to move and buy, XYZ type home. But we don't want to make the move right now because interest rates are so high. We just don't know if right now is the best time to sell and then to go out and buy. What's your advice? Because I know that there are hundreds of thousands of people right now, sellers, homeowners, waiting for rates to come down. Yep. What's your best advice to someone in that scenario?
So this person is waiting to sell before rates come down. Is that right?
They would sell right now if you gave them data, a reason to, or advice to. But in their heart of heart, they're like, you know what? We don't want to go sell our house and, let's say, net $500,000 and put that down on another house because we have a 3% 30-year fixed right now. We don't want to go buy another house and now have a 6.5 30-year fixed.
I mean, so first of all, I can totally empathize with somebody feeling that way, because to go from a 3% rate of financing to a 6%, you're basically doubling the interest payments that you're going to have, right? Yeah. The only thing to consider is, again, going back to where the market's at right now, as soon as those rates drop, buyers are going to enter the market in droves. Even if there's a rate with a 5 in front of it, 5 point whatever, buyers are going to come back from the sidelines and start getting into the market. So what I would say to this person is, look, let's take the opportunity right now, go through the home, see what we need to do, like you said, presentation, preparation, and then pricing, right? So if we can arrive based on the presentation and based on the preparation work that we need to do, if we can arrive at a price that works for you, then we can put your house on the market, take advantage of the fact that there still are multiple offers for those great homes right now. So we can present your home as a great one and get you multiple offers, and then on your way. That'd be one option to do, an aggressive option, but it's what I'd recommend in a lot of cases.
I advise people to, so many times we find ourselves caught in the moment, caught in where we're at right now versus thinking, all right, this next house is your next home that you're buying, that you're going to live in for, let's just say, another 7+ years, right? Yeah. So instead of putting so much thought on where we're at now, even though you may, let's say you leave $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 on the table by selling now versus waiting 6 months to sell, but you wait 6 months to sell or 3 months to sell or 5 months to sell, your buyer transaction could increase like 6 figures. We just saw a client this weekend lose out in Woodinville, lose out on 16 offers property went $300,000 over list price. So we didn't even make the top 5, and they went $150K over list price. So
this was last week?
Just 2 days ago.
2 days ago.
Yeah. And so, you know, buyers are going to, like you just said, when rates come down, your competition now just 10x'd versus right now, if you can find that home that meets your criteria for, and this is the advice that I'm giving as a mortgage professional, if the home that you're looking for exists right now, tie it down and figure out the sell details at a later date.
So that's another good option. If you don't want to list, because we're trying to create urgency from the market with your listing, but you don't have to list it right away. We can start shopping. We can get you a pre-approval. We can get you situated into looking for what might suit you next, and then we can have that conversation about putting your home on the market. And Dan, I just wanted to go back and touch on something else too. I always like to help people see the positive side of things. And so if I have a friend or somebody who's lived in a home for 7 or 8 years, when they sell it today, they're going to make money, right? They're going to make money. And so that is kind of something I help people highlight is, look, since you bought this home, here's where it appreciated to. You're going to make hundreds of thousands of dollars in most cases in our market from the sale. So waiting another year, you know, the money, time over money. It's a time over money argument, right?
Okay, so I'm going to drop a major nugget, a gold nugget right here. And this is me being in the industry for 16 plus years, but this is a real life scenario. Very, very similar situation the other day. I was walking a client through. Do we wait? Do we sell now? I said, go meet with your real estate agent, get what's called a net seller's proceeds. So it showed them, it was a married couple, okay? And they'd been in the home for about little over 6 years. It showed them netting about $600,000, okay? So there's something called capital gains. If you're married, you can go up to $500,000 and be capital gains exempt. When I started talking with them about the fact that anything over 500, you're going to have to pay capital gains on, they were like, why would I wait to sell it and make 700 to then pay more taxes when they could go out right now and negotiate a better deal on a property on their own terms, right? Versus waiting, like we talked about a minute ago, and potentially having to pay way more. So again, this is not necessarily a plug in regards to what I do, but sort of, I guess. It's my podcast. I can plug myself if I want. But this is a plug to make sure that real estate is the largest financial decision of your life. Make sure you're working with a professional like Tyler or like myself that can help take all of the info, all of the data, and help put together a plan for you to make sure that the transitionary plan, if you're selling and then buying, is the right financial decision for you. So in closing, I'm going to surprise you with this one. Okay.
Bring it. Let's go.
You and I are going on a road trip.
Okay.
It's going to be about a 2.5 hour road trip.
Okay.
And we're going to pop into a mini mart. We got to get a drink and a snack.
Okay.
What are you grabbing to sip on, and what are you grabbing to snack on?
Man, I'll give you 2 answers. I'll give you the cheap meal answer, and I'll give you the good answer. So the first one, the good answer, I'm going to grab a bottle of water and a protein bar. Yep. Because if we're driving, I'm going to be hungry, and protein is key. But if we're not going to be so good, I'm probably going to grab a Red Bull and then something spicy, hot Cheetos, whether it's Takis, something to munch on where I can keep eating until the bag is gone. That's the move.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. That's a great answer. I like the healthy version and the just free-for-all version. So awesome. And if you know this guy, he is super disciplined. He works out daily. He takes great care of himself and his business and his shows. So, hey, man, I appreciate you coming on today. I know this is value-packed. If someone wants to reach out to you, best place to follow you and best place to reach out to you.
Well, we mentioned Instagram, another plug, tylermorgan.re, or phone number is always great, 509-993-3408. It's on me all hours of the day.
Yeah, and I love Tyler. Tyler lives in the Maple Valley area and sells where he lives. Does a great job in Maple Valley. But one of the things I love most about Tyler, he's right across the freeway from my office here in Kirkland and does a ton of business here in the Kirkland, Bothell, Kirkland, Redmond, Bellevue area, all the way to Maple Valley. So he truly is an East Sider. So if you have any questions, I want you to reach out to this guy. I appreciate you guys listening. We'll be back next month with another professional spotlight just like Tyler. Bye for now.